Hello, this is Alex, aka Red Tower 102, and in this episode I will be analyzing 10 portraits from classical art in honor of the Halloween season of what I believe to be just generally strange or uncanny. The first painting is by the Flemish artist Jan van Eyck, painted in 1435, and it depicts a married couple in holy matrimony. It's very mysterious for several reasons. The fact that they both have blank expressions on their faces gives it an air of uncertainty or a slight off-putting quality. Another reason is the centerpiece in the middle of the room showing off the perspective of the viewer. It's almost like it's inviting the viewer into the room without any prior knowledge of what's happening, almost like it's sucking in the viewer unintentionally. The woman in the painting, Mrs. Arnolfini, has her hand over her belly and a hump over her dress, seeming to suggest that she's pregnant. There have been numerous theories as to why the portrait was commissioned by Arnolfini. Some think it was to show off his impressive wealth and marriage status. Some believe it was intended as a wedding present. One theory that has been suggested is that it was painted posthumously, and the woman in the painting had died in childbirth. This wasn't uncommon at the time of Van Eyck's painting of the subjects, considering how prevalent death from childbirth was. The evidence for this is the fact that the candle and the candelabra are lit on Mr. Arnolfini's side, while the candle on Mrs. Arnolfini's side has gone out, and the wax is melted, once again adding to the mysterious quality of the painting. Whatever the case may be, I think this painting is definitely uncanny, especially whenever looking into that haunting mirror. The next picture is another famous painting, which I'm sure many in the audience will recognize. It depicts a scene from the Garden of Earthly Delights by the Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch, painted in around 1500, where the normal customs of society are flipped around. Here we see people being tormented by demons in punishment for their sins. In the upper section, there are various musical instruments being played to symbolize the hedonistic tendency of music playing. On the left, there's a man being impaled by harp strings, while other people watch on in horror. The man on the right is carrying a trumpet, while a flute is being jammed up his backside. The people have their ears covered to show their discontent at the horrible sound of the trumpet playing. In the center right, we see people being consumed by a giant bird and being excreted into a hole where all the other sinners are. Also, a man is excreting coins, probably to symbolize greed. The woman on the left is looking into a mirror of the backside of another demon, reflecting the narcissistic vanity of her life. The people in the center left are huddled around a gambling table, with various demons torturing them with gambling boards and dices. Bosch, being a devout Christian, was probably unsatisfied with the customs of his time, used painting as his way of showing the sinful nature of people. I think what makes this scene in particular terrifying is it showing the hard reality of the sinners. In all of their lust and torment, there's a kind of humanity to them that I think we can all relate to. This is a clay sculpture by the Italian artist Torrigiano. Torrigiano is known as the rival of Michelangelo, and for breaking his nose in a fight instigated by an insult made to him by Michelangelo in 1489. This particular sculpture depicts the penance of Saint Jerome. In his right hand is a rock which he penitentially beats himself with, and in his left hand he holds a cross which he looks on with in devout humility. Unlike other Renaissance sculptors at the time, Torrigiano sculpted his work out of terracotta clay instead of marble. Terracotta is particularly interesting because, unlike marble, an artist is able to mold and paint over it in exquisite detail. In the sculpture, we're able to see every vein and every contortion of the muscle with accurate precision. We can even see in the face of the ascetic the terrible guilt he feels as he tries to absolve himself of his sins. What really makes this sculpture so strange is the detail that it has in portraying human-like qualities. The clay the artist uses gives it an almost uncanny appearance, giving it a silky sheen. This is a painting by the Italian artist Caravaggio. Caravaggio depicts the head of Medusa after it was cut off by the hero Perseus. The Gorgon has her hair covered in snakes, and whoever looks into her eyes will be turned into stone. Here, Caravaggio uses a likeness of his own face as a way of pronouncing his reputation as an artist. We also see the use of tenebrism, a typical Caravaggio technique, as a way of contrasting light and dark shades. The painting is particularly horrifying to look at, considering that Medusa had just been decapitated. The face shows a mixture of surprise, but also horror, as it realizes that it has just been decapitated. The blood spilling out of its neck also gives it a macabre quality. The mouth and jaw are elongated, adding to yet another sense of dread and disbelief as the Gorgon succumbs to her fate. The Nightmare by Henry Fuseli. This is a painting that has inspired the fascination of artists, poets, and psychologists alike with its deep symbolism, erotic subject matter, and its highly infatuating quality. Painted in 1781 and first shown in the Royal Academy in London, the painting was met with horror and fascination by the general public. The painting went on to be immensely popular in the decades that followed, influencing a whole array of artists and scientists. The painting shows a woman lying down in her bedchamber, while a nefarious demon called an incubus lies on top of her, gazing at the viewer, while an evil spirit called a nightmare is watching over the scene. The woman appears lifeless and helpless and can do nothing to stop the grip of the monsters have on her. I think what really makes this painting so haunting is the expression of the nightmare. It has an almost doll-like expression in size with a mixture of eroticism, adding to the ominous quality of the scene itself, almost like it's enjoying what's going on. I love the contrasting colors of red and white in this painting. That, along with the light and dark shades, is very prominent, and I think it was deliberately intended as a way of showing light and dark forces working against one another. As the woman is left helpless with her hands strewn over the bed, the mare and incubus are looking on with sadistic revelry. This is a painting by one of my favorite artists, Francisco de Goya. This one is a part of his black painting collection, of which 14 were made. It's called The Witches' Sabbath, and it depicts a gathering of witches surrounded by a large goat man giving a loud screech. The hags all have deformed faces, and they all look on in fear of the goat man, giving its deafening howl. Even into the 19th century, superstition and backwards thinking were very prevalent during Spain, as were witch gatherings at the time. Given Goya's deep liberal values, it had a very profound effect on the sensitive painter. Along with Goya's failing health and the uncertainty of Spain's future, morally as well as economically and politically, Goya resorted to dealing with the turbulence in the only way he knew how, which was through art. The black paintings themselves were never intended for public viewing, as it contained too dark of a subject matter, but they hung in Goya's house after he had gone into self-imposed exile in 1823. The compulsion of the witches to cling to fear in the face of uncertainty adds to the overall sense of dread when looking at the Witches' Sabbath. Saturn devouring his son, another in Goya's black paintings collection. This is perhaps the most terrifying image of godless horror ever devised. The most striking thing that immediately grabs the attention of the viewer is the sense of hopelessness in the eyes of the Titan. As Saturn is hunched over and maniacally eating the arm of his son, he's looking on with a feeling of desperation, but also ecstasy as his hunger is being satiated. But he's also ruthlessly devouring his son. He knows that his hunger will never be satiated. He knows that his lust for power will never be quenched, but can't do anything to stop it. And that is what I think makes this painting so chilling. It's important to understand our own darker natures, and I think this painting conveys that so brilliantly. This is a painting by Giorgio de Chirico in 1914 called Melancholy and Mystery of a Street. De Chirico is a surrealist painter that experimented with abstract perspectives, elongated shadows, and non-Euclidean geometry. His work symbolizes a sense of forlornness in the modern world, but also gives a sense of hopeful mystery to it that I find very inspiring. Not all scary paintings have to be particularly dreadful. They can also inspire a sense of mystery and wonder to them, in the case this one. In the foreground, we see a girl playing with a hula hoop with a shadow being cast from the inner walls of the building. Going into the street, we see an elongated row of archways being cast down into the courtyard, with a statue on the right casting a shadow from the sun. I love the feeling of freedom and solitude that comes from this painting, as it evokes a sense of wonder and mystery that can only be seen from de Chirico. Hopper's Nighthawks, painted in 1942, is another painting that expresses the forlornness of modern life. This painting is much more pessimistic, reflecting Hopper's own life as he struggled to define his own style. Hopper would spend literally days at an easel trying helplessly to raise a paintbrush. The painting reflects a need for the comfort of others in the modern world. The two figures in the painting are a man and a woman who seem to be discontent with one another and are avoiding eye contact. They're both leaning over the bar as the bartender is serving their drinks. What's most striking about the painting is the fact that the diner has no door, or that it's not in focus. The door behind the bar doesn't lead outside, and probably only leads to the kitchen. On the left side of the bar is a man minding his own business, and doesn't seem interested in the couple sitting to his right. Outside of the bar is an empty street with no one around, adding to the feeling of loneliness we get as we peer into the forlorn diner. The last painting we'll be looking at is Relativity by the Dutch artist M.C. Escher. This painting depicts a series of gravitational forces all acting upon the inhabitants within. 16 figures inhabit the painting, all with expressionless faces and wooden bodies. As each force of gravity is affected on them, they each go about their daily lives, doing common tasks that most of us do in our own experiences. The shifting perspectives and impossible geometry gives a disorienting yet immersive feeling that pulls you into it. I think if someone were to actually go in and talk to one of the residents, it would probably be a bit of a boring conversation, considering that none of them actually have faces and can't probably talk. The eeriness of it all also adds to its mysterious quality, but also a charm to it, which I really like about it. That's all of the paintings I have for today. I hope everyone has a happy Halloween, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.